and welcome to Porch Chats. This is Colleen Condon. I'm chair of the Charleston County Democratic Party, and today I'm here with Jason Mills. Jason, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Colleen. How are you?
Doing great. Well, you're running for State Senate 41, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I decided to throw my name in the hat.
So why are you running, Jason?
Well, I feel like there needed to be somebody who represented our area and our community that I kind of felt like needed just real life experience. Somebody that had, done a lot of the same stuff that I did. I went to, I was told I got to go to college to get a good job. Okay, so I go to college to get a good job. And it turned out that I gravitated towards healthcare. So I finished pharmacy school and I became a pharmacist. In that same time frame, I got married. We bought a house, so you get the mortgage, you got the student loans, you start becoming a productive member of society, and life is good, right? And then a few more years later, I have a couple of kids. We got 3 dogs. Everything's just going great. But while I was working for the hospital, I actually started to move more in a direction that wasn't really patient-facing care. It was actually more in healthcare policy. And I started to advocate more. And I got so much joy out of trying to connect multiple patients to healthcare solutions than just doing the one-off, every one patient at a time. And I continued down that pathway. And what I found was so many of the programs that I was operating within that were doing great work, it was connecting patients to care, were actually under attack at a federal and or state level, whether it was, South Carolina's inability to expand Medicaid, or at the federal level, attacking programs like the 340B program, which is not a taxpayer funded program. It actually comes out of big pharma, attacking that program. So I said, what is going on with this? So I decided to get active. I started going to a lot of our legislators' offices, knocking on doors, going in there with my little folder and pieces of paper. And boy, is it really hard to actually get the attention of a legislator. But once you actually do, you got about this much time. And boy, when you start talking about something like healthcare and you can only go once a year compared to big pharma, who has lobbyists that are, sleeping overnight in the parking lot every night, it really is an uphill battle. And when I started to look around at a lot of our elected officials, they all started to look the same to me. They all had a very similar background. Many of them were groomed from their college years or even before that. And in some families, it's almost like a legacy. It's like the family business. And so, just year after year after year of a lot of the same different faces, but same backgrounds, I just said, you know what? None of these people represent me. I've been doing what I was supposed to be doing, trying to pursue my American dream, and nothing's changing the way that I think it should. So I said, dadgummit, I'm going to file. So here I am. Too long?
Well, I would warn you, sometimes there are a lot of people with the same last name because we all were raised to believe in community service. So
hey,
you are talking to a Condon, Jason. Don't forget that.
Hey.
So, okay. Well, tell me, you mentioned a 340P program. What's that?
Yeah. So the 340B program it's a federal program. It's actually super old. It went into effect in 1992. So right at the beginning of the Clinton administration is when it started. And the intent was to try to stretch scarce federal resources so that hospitals could try to extend themselves by stretching those federal resources. They could then expand their community benefit. In other words, they could reach more patients. They could access more patients. So it really forced a lot of our healthcare institutions to be smart with their money, which is never a bad thing, and over the last 20 some odd years that program has been in place, a couple of people started paying attention to it, namely Big Pharma. And the 340B program actually affects their bottom line by single percentage points, by the way, but single percentage points to hundreds of billions of dollars means lots of money. So they don't like it. So what you end up having is a 340B program that helps connect patients to affordable medication or healthcare services. And almost nobody knows about this other than people that are actually in the inner circles of healthcare. And
So
that's
like, are these
something
the
that,
people when are really sick with like a certain kind of cancer, they can get a discounted price from the pharmacist, from the company?
so many times our oncology patients fall into this category because those medications are so obscenely expensive. But you know what? A lot of medications that are very commonplace fall into that same bucket. The one most notably is our diabetes population. Insulin is not a new medication. It should not cost hundreds of dollars. It should cost pennies. And the fact that it is still hundreds of dollars per vial is something that is, well, I don't want to throw the word around too frivolously, but in my opinion, it's criminal. It's a life-saving medication. It should be something that is affordable, available all the time. And the 340B program, the one that I manage and the one that many other people like me manage across the country, can make that medication extremely affordable, maybe even pennies.
Wow.
So it's just having that knowledge about how healthcare works on these, very little known, seldom known programs, and then having the wherewithal to say, no, this doesn't need to go away, Big Pharma. You're making enough money. Maybe stop running commercials on my television and put those dollars into R&D. Then we'll have a good conversation. But don't take away a program that gives people medication that they need.
So what do you think the state General Assembly can do about either 340B or about Medicaid expansion?
Well, first of all, Medicaid expansion just needs to happen. And the fact that it's a partisan issue is one of the saddest things that I have ever seen. We know it works. We know that there were states that were early adopters of the Medicaid expansion. Many of those states, quote unquote, didn't actually need to expand Medicaid, but they did. And good for them. And then we also saw many states that drug their feet through that process because they were partisan and they didn't want to be seen as agreeing with Obama. And but eventually they did, very quietly, very late, but they did. And the fact that our state still hasn't just goes to show that our state assembly is extremely partisan on something as fundamental as healthcare. And I've just never been able to reconcile that in my head. And it gets me heated, Colleen. I'll try to bring it down. But, it's something I'm extremely passionate about. And what eventually happened was, well, I'm sorry, I'm not even answering a question you asked. I'll be quiet. You can ask.
No, I think it's very helpful. Have you tried approaching Senator Sin about any of these medical issues?
It's been hard to actually get any of our state assembly, especially our Republican senators, to even take an office meeting or answer an email or a phone call. Again, when you start talking about something like healthcare, they just kind of glass over. It's really hard to have a special interest in healthcare because it's really hard to make money in that type of stretch. I know that sounds a little conspiracy theory, but their eyes don't light up the way they would if they found out that this would be something that would help contribute to their next campaign or to their own private business. Short answer to that is I have not heard back.
I'm wondering if COVID may help put more of a focus on the necessity of decent medical care.
I think that, being a Democrat, I have a tendency to be a cockeyed optimist. towards, our community. And I do think that the few silver linings that we're going to get out of this is it forced us to open the hood and really see how dirty this engine really looks like. Whether you're talking about having access to testing, whether you're talking about just having access to healthcare, highlighting the fact that COVID is disproportionately affecting several of our community members, a lot of our Black and brown brothers and sisters. That is not a surprise to people that have been studying population health. We've been screaming this forever. And, as much as I'm happy that we're talking about it, talk and action are two completely different things. And I'm really hoping that if we're going to open the hood, we're going to look at it. Let's clean the engine. Let's just stop talking about how dirty it is. Let's actually get in there and change some things. So if that means that we need to expand Medicaid, we expand Medicaid. If it means we need to change Medicaid, we change Medicaid. You asked me how we could, dovetail the 340B program. One of the most expensive line items in our state budget is our healthcare through our state Medicaid. Okay. Some of the most expensive medications on the market right now are what are called specialty drugs. These cost tens of thousands of dollars. We could do some very precise selection of where our Medicaid population that requires specialty drugs, where they can fill those prescriptions at any 340B participating pharmacy in the state. And because that will reduce the cost of those medications to the state, it will actually affect our budget in a positive way. We will spend less money in healthcare by spending less money on drugs. But again, we don't do that.
Okay. Well, that's interesting to know. Now, we do need to take a step back, I think, and make sure people know where Senate District 41 is. Can you help explain that?
Of course. So if you live on James Island, but not all of James Island, but a good portion of James Island, parts of West Ashley, going up into Dorchester, heading up towards Somerville, and it also has a nice little creep over onto Johns Island. So it ends up being a very interesting shaped district. If you live in the Avondale area of West Ashley, you probably don't live in District 41. If you live just east of Fort Johnson on James Island, then you probably don't live in District 41. So it's got some interesting line drawings. The gerrymandering at that point was some interesting decisions there, but it shouldn't shock anybody that they decided to carve out the people that live on the coast, which I'm assuming they thought were people with money, who they thought were probably going to be voting Republican, and decided to try to make that a safe haven for red and leave a lot of the people that are in the working class, people that live in our parts of James Island and West Ashley going up into Dorchester. And when these district lines were drawn, Johns Island, there was, not a whole lot there. Now there are dozens of suburbs that are actually now part of District 41. So I think District 41 presents an amazing opportunity to flip a seat from Republican to Democrat, because so many of our democratic ideals are actually represented in this district. And it's also worth noting that in 2016, there was no Democrat at the general election. It was just Senator Sen. So that's actually what really got me going, was when I got to that ballot box and saw the place where I lived did not have a Democrat at the general election. So, but yeah, that's District 41 in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah, we worked very hard. It is the first time in 30 years, at least, that the Democratic Party has had a candidate run for every single office across the county. So glad we're in that situation now.
Yes, we're going to change some stuff. It's going to be fun.
Now, you mentioned you have 3 kids. How old are they?
Well, I have 2 kids, 3 dogs.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And no, they all get lumped together. So I have twins. I have 2 10-year-olds, a boy and a girl. So
how's
really
that homeschooling coming?
It's a challenge. So as I
We might
said,
all, we might all learn to pay teachers more after this.
yeah. Oh, don't. Hey, those should be six-figure salaries. Um, you know, but because of that, because I have children, because they're in the public, school system, I am so excited about change in our education system. So, my two 10-year-olds, they're both in fourth grade. We're surviving this COVID-19 situation. But I was having a conversation with a teacher just this Saturday, talking about how are we going to right size this year? How are we going to try to get some valuable education time to our kids, because it's a struggle. Both my wife and I, we are healthcare providers. We're considered essential staff, frontline. And, so what does that mean? It means we have to figure out something during the day for our kids. And then we come home from a full day of working with limited resources because of COVID-19. So we're tired, we're cranky, and now we have to explain, their math homework. Although I will say right now, both my kids are working on something about the US Constitution. So suddenly I'm all over the place and I'm like, what is the Constitution? And they're just like, and I'm like, no, go back, watch the video again. We are going to talk about what the US Constitution is. But yeah, we, in talking with our teacher, we, something that I've been very passionate about is year-round school year. I think that is something that we really need to explore. And I think if we had adopted a year-round curriculum, then situations like this, albeit rare, would not present necessarily the paradigm that we're in now, where we're trying to figure out what are we going to do in summer? What are we going to do at the handoff to the next grade level? If we were able to insert some of the breaks that come with a year-round school system, we would probably be able to absorb some of the chaos that we're in right now and be able to offset it and put it into the summer months. That comes with trying to help our teachers. If it's year-round, then they should be paid commensurate with a 12-month program. So that should mean increased pay for our educators. I'm sure there are some out there that disagree with it, but I've probably talked to about 20 different teachers of various districts, and I've yet to meet one that doesn't agree that year-round school would make things easier.
Good to know. Kids probably would protest more than anything.
Yeah, I probably am not going to be the favorite for advocating for that. But I remember being bored towards the end of summer and being restless. And now, being a dad, I've seen my kids also be restless at the end of summer. And, things like the pool and the beach don't hold the majesty that they used to at the beginning of summer. And they're ready to get back in it. I think we could definitely shorten some of these breaks. It makes it so that you have things like access to school lunches are year round, and you don't have this 3-month chunk where people have to figure out what they're going to feed their kids over the summer. Daycare for 3 months is extremely expensive, where if it was a little bit more spread out over the year, maybe in 2-week increments, it could potentially be more affordable. It wouldn't be this, big nut at the middle of the year where you're going to lose hundreds of dollars in daycare. So I see nothing but advantages when it comes to a year-round school system.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that idea. So if people want to read more about you, Jason, and hear more about you, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, the best way to connect with me is through social media. I love answering questions, whether they're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So that is Mills4SC Senate on all of those handles. On Twitter, it's the number 4. On Instagram and Facebook, it's FOR. And then I do have Mills4SCSenate.com. That's my website. I talk a little bit more about some of our other initiatives. I'm very passionate about the environment. My dad was an environmental engineer, so I grew up, listening to all the different things that we don't take advantage of that could make sustainable fuel, recycling, reuse. Very passionate about those, but namely clean water is my biggest one with the environment. So if you want to get to know me a little bit more, go to my webpage. There's a volunteer sign-up option. I really have been reticent to ask for any types of donations this quarter, just because I know a lot of people are struggling right now. So the most important thing you could do for me is go to the ballot box on June 9th or through an absentee ballot. So if you're going to do an absentee ballot, please go to, I believe it's scvotes.org, and you can find out everything that you need to know about absentee ballots. If you don't feel comfortable going to the ballot box, regardless, you will see my name there for District 41. So the most important thing you could do for me is put a check next to my name.
Terrific. Well, Jason, thanks for your time today. Appreciate
No,
a
this has
chance to
been
get to
great.
know you a little better.
Oh yeah, appreciate it, Colleen.
Wonderful. Well, we'll keep in touch. The primary, as you said, is June 9th. And actually
Yes,
keep tuned because there's about to be a big announcement about absentee ballots. So more information to follow.
All right.
Have a good afternoon.